I wonder if you know that I want the best for you. But how long will you fight solo? I wonder if you know that we can get help. Not wondering anymore. Love, your mind.
This is More Than Therapy podcast. More Than Therapy.
Kelly Polfy. Hi,
This is More Than Therapy.
Juice,
More Than Therapy
the important
podcast. This is More Than Therapy. More Than Therapy podcast.
It's really important.
I'm glad that you want to pursue your own. So,
we often talk about resilience as bouncing back from a bad day, but what does resilience look like when your own government declares you an enemy? Not once, but twice. Today, we aren't just talking about history, we're talking about the psychology of survival. Today, we're widening the lens to look at how trauma and triumph are passed down through generations. My guest is Dr. Rob Wolf, a medical doctor and author of the 4-time award-winning book, Not a Real Enemy. Rob's story is the saga of his father, Irvin Wolf, a man who defied the odds by escaping the Nazis, only to find himself trapped again under communist Hungary. It's a story of daring escapes, long history, and the incredible will to survive. We're going to discuss the forgotten history of the Hungarian Jews, the weight of generational trauma, and why Rob believes that what happened to his dad could happen to anyone. Dr. Rob Wolf, welcome to the More Than Therapy podcast.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure being here. And
Indeed.
happy holidays. Happy holidays to you.
You too. Thank you, sir. So let's start. For those who haven't read the book yet anyway, because honestly, I'm going to I meant to get it beforehand. I'm definitely going to put my hands on it. I think it's more important now than ever, in my opinion, Dr. Wolf. But for those who have not read the book, take us back to Hungary. Who was Irvin Wolf before the world turned upside down?
Well, my dad was not a real enemy the way the Russians described him, which we can talk about later. The true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom. The book is a biography about my dad. It covers his childhood, even a few years before, from the end of World War I to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. It's also a history book about little-known Hungary, like you just said. And it's an adventure and the trials and tribulations of my dad's parents, family, who didn't have it as good. I shouldn't say as good, but weren't fortunate enough to survive like my dad. As a child, he was raised with discipline, but he was a pretty spoiled kid. Went to school. Mom took him to the park during the summer. They loved him very much. He was an only child, and I think he had a pretty good childhood until the Nazis took over and forced these families, these young men, to go to forced labor camp. So that was a sticker shock for him, and he got through it. But at first, it was really hard for him. He was more of a cerebral guy and not as physical. In the meantime, when he was a kid, like he was kicked off his swim team, for example, in high school for being Jewish. So there was that incident, and his father lost a government job as a dentist, including salary and benefits because he was Jewish. Jewish people were not allowed to own radios back in the rise of fascism and the Nazis. So, and of course, limited curfew times, limited times to be out in public, not to mention the threat of the public against you, especially when they had to start wearing those ridiculous yellow stars. So there's an arc to it. My dad starts off his life pretty decent, pretty lucky, pretty spoiled. Kind of like to compare it to some of us Americans, with our entitlement. And that's the lesson. You already said it, that what happened to my father could happen to any one of us. And once you read this book, you'll see why I say, geez, that could happen to me too. And how would I survive it? How would I survive it without PTSD? Like my father. So not to flash forward too far, but the punchline was he delivered 10,000 babies in the Detroit area after all he went through. And you never know what he had gone through, which is really remarkable. All he wanted to do was be free and be a good doctor. And ultimately, he got both.
Your father had the terrifying distinction of being hunted by 2 massive totalitarian regimes, the Nazis and the communists. How did he manage to survive the first wave to ever be present for the second wave?
Well, his first escape was that's the one I remember the most from when I first read the manuscript 30 years ago. Pretty harrowing. He and his friend Frank were in the middle of a march, and they thought they didn't get much news, but they thought that the World War II was nearing an end, and they didn't know whether they should stay with this group of the forced laborers or try to get into Austria or stay in Hungary. And depending on who won the war, you know, if you're a Jew, you're screwed. So, but either way, they thought that they were on a death march. And my dad had an infected foot, as a matter of fact, and they had about a 3-day window to escape. And so they kind of drew themselves back at the end of the line, waited till dusk, and took off in the middle of the Carpathian Mountains. And it's you know, like Chris Berman, rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. If you remember him talking about football, so this is kind of like them in the cold mountains, not knowing the terrain, running and running and running, finding a place to escape, and not knowing where you're going. And so they did manage to escape. The guards went after them, looked for them, dogs. A third guy who didn't plan on escaping with them kind of tagged along behind them. They caught that guy. So can you imagine hearing them hiding in the thicket and hearing them taking this guy away, possibly beating him and whatever else, and who knows whatever. Actually, if I remember correctly, that third escapee survived. So, but I don't remember his name. Second escape, they finally make it to Budapest. Frank and my dad, they find good people, they find bad people. There were people willing to help them, but they found this guy that had a truck, and he offered to give them a ride from point A to point B. Double crossed them, end up in what they call the dog pound, where they collected escaped forced laborers. And my dad, and it's right in front of Nazi headquarters in Budapest. And my dad and Frank came up with a very short-term strategy to get out of there, and the split-second timing between soldiers, and the kind of story that makes me say I'm lucky to be here. My dad was lucky to survive. I like to think of the hand of God as helping him in these escapes. So that was under the Nazis, and then soon after, Dad was he was hiding out, and he was repairing bicycles, and with the help of some great Christian people, and finally the war ended. But it was the Soviets and renegade Romanians that actually ended up saving my dad for at least their part of the war. This was in 1944, before the year before the whole war ended officially. And like you said, after that, the communists stayed. They stuck around. And if it were the United States that had conquered Hungary instead, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd probably been raised in Hungary, raised in a democracy, and maybe if I was lucky, I'd go to medical school in Hungary as well. But that wasn't the case. The communists took over. They were very repressive. They treated the remaining, so out of 825,000 Hungarian Jews, 550 plus thousand were killed during World War II. That doesn't include 50 or 60 million people that died in that war, let alone those that died or were tortured, persecuted under the Soviets, not just in Hungary, but in other European countries too, as you know. So they had to suffer through that in the 40s and 50s. Stalin took over, and he was no friend to the Hungarians or the Jews, and they were not allowed to have Jewish weddings, for example. And my mom and dad had one, and the gentleman, my mom's uncle, who was a surgeon, sponsored it in his house, and they arrested him that night, claiming that he was responsible for the Raoul Wallenberg murder. Wallenberg was one of the guys that helped out the Jews in Europe with the forged papers, if you remember. And but before that, when my dad was a med student and he finally got into medical school, which is another one of 20 miracles in the book, he decided he was tired of the communist regime, so he escaped. And he made it to the border, and he argued with an armed Russian soldier, and they let him through into Austria. He was claiming he was going to be fixing radiology equipment, and he bluffed his way through it. But he got nervous about reprisal, and if he got arrested, where would this take his medical career? So he turned around, went back, and he was on call the next night, and nobody even knew he was gone. And then his fourth escape with my mom, 1956, after the Hungarian Revolution. Not a lot of people know about that war. 3,000 people died. It failed miserably. Countless refugees, a lot of injuries, and my mom and dad were frontliners. My dad was already a surgeon by then, OBGYN, but had to double down as a trauma surgeon. So 24/7 work for 2 weeks. And my mom ran the blood bank. She was a medical student, so But by then they had enough. They said, this is 2 wars, countless persecution. I can't, and they wanted to practice medicine, but they wanted to be free. So they took the risk and they got out. And that was a harrowing escape too. They had to try it a couple of times because of different obstacles. Very interesting stories, and very fortunate to every one of those escapes are really miraculous. And a teaser is my dad even missed escape under the communist Hungary. He went to the wrong train station. Everybody else went to the right train station, but everybody else that went to the right train got arrested, including my dad's medical school classmates. So if you can believe that, he thought he was the unluckiest guy in the world that night, but turned out he was the luckiest. So amazing stories.
You mentioned in your bio that nearly 500,000 Hungarian Jews were deported and killed. Why do you think the Hungarian chapter of the Holocaust is often described as forgotten history?
Well, not a lot of people know about Hungarian history in general. I mean, true historians, World War II historians, I guess Jewish historians. I didn't know much about it myself until I delved into this project, and I just wanted to enlighten people as to the perils of anti-Semitism in our little corner. I mean, that's where my parents were raised. But same with Romania, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, Czechoslovakia at the time. All these persecuted people, and of course France and Germany. Germany and Austria. I said so. Denmark, and then it was spreading around Europe, and of course Greece. Turns out I was in Greece a couple months ago and found out that the Greek islands had a couple thousand Jews, and they were hauled off to Auschwitz as well, in different concentration camps. So really not really a lot not known about the Hungarian history, and so that's my corner of it, because my dad wrote the stories in the 70s as though they'd happened the previous day, crisp and clean and clear. The smells, the sights, the fear, the way the table was set. So when I read it the second time, turned his autobiography into a biography a few years ago. I just couldn't believe the story. So I can't leave it on a computer. I can't leave this on a disc. I wanted to share it. And that was motivation enough. And my parents had the anti-Semitism theme in the backdrop throughout the book. And I know they left it for me as a legacy. But if you knew me 7 years ago, you say, this guy would never write a book about the Holocaust or history. And here we are, because it was just too intriguing. The motivation was there.
Indeed. The title, Not a Real Enemy, is incredibly evocative. In the eyes of the regimes your parents lived under, what made someone a real enemy versus not a real one?
Well, all the Jews, apparently, if you were a Jew, you were screwed, like I said. So the Jews were the enemies. I mean, they for whatever reason, and it's going on now, as we know, it's 60, 80, 100 years later. And I got to say that my parents also wrote this thing knowing that anti-Semitism, hatred, and racism would again rear its ugly head, and they're right about that too. And don't you hate it when your parents are right? But I was originally, the title was the Hungarian Papillon, the Hungarian butterfly, because of all my dad's escapes, and that would be after the great escape artist from Devil's Island. If you may or may not have seen the movie from the 70s, and great story, Steve McQueen, Dustin Hoffman. But my co-author, Janice, who did an amazing job helping me, convinced me that the younger crowd, the younger reader, would not understand the reference. So, and then the other one I entertained was the Six Books of Moses, the sixth book of Moses, because that was my dad's Hebrew name, Moshe ben Yosef, Moses, son of Joseph. So, and because of all the miracles and the escapes, but Janice came up with Not a Real Enemy. There's a chapter in the book called Not a Real Enemy, and it was right before my parents' last escape in 1956. My dad, now his risk tolerance was way high by now. He sneaks into the medical staff office between security guards. He could have gotten caught doing that. The place was a mess because the war had just ended and they were about to leave. And he just wanted to make sure he had a clean dossier. So he checked what his records were when he found it. And the Russians, in their arrogance, called him Not a Real Enemy. They called him politically immature, but not against communism per se. Just did his work and politically neutral, politically immature. But in fact, the irony is that my mom and dad were a real enemy. My dad was a real enemy because the next day they were about to lose two good people that would have practiced medicine in Hungary all their lives. They loved Mother Hungary, but they hated Nazi Hungary and Communist Hungary. So in the end, they were a real enemy. And my dad had a chance to poison people, poison soldiers under the communist regime, taking care of the food, but he dared not because one bad meal and with little refrigeration. So I haven't mentioned that story in a long time, but that was a story in the book that my dad made damn sure that the food that was given to soldiers as a Jewish man was good and healthy, not unhealthy to a person. So a lot of pressure on him, even at peacetime. Not a real enemy. He sure was. He wasn't, but he was. I mean, he was chased around all his life for being Jewish. So, but he was unarmed and never hurt anybody and delivered babies, practiced medicine. So it's a very paradoxical title.
Most people can't imagine losing their home once, let alone having to restart life entirely in a new country. What was the American dream like for your parents when they finally arrived?
It's a great question, and that would be in part two, the book part two, because we end this book in Vienna when they finally are in a free country. Really rough at first. They had a rough. Well, first of all, when they got to Vienna, they were so happy to see my mom's stepfather. My mom's parents got divorced and both remarried, and they did that to save the family name, to spread the family name, if you can believe that. That's not a reason you hear much around here. But they get to Vienna. They're happy as hell. My dad wants a Coca-Cola. That's the first thing he wants. And they're happy to be there. They're joyous. But my mom's mother and stepfather were living in Israel at the time. He was a consulate out of Hungary, and he actually helped them sneaking some money up from Israel too from time to time. But they wanted them to live in Israel. But Israel was in the Sinai War at the time in 1956. So that was a tough decision for them because she wanted to live near her mom, but they also wanted to be in a free country that wasn't with the war. So they ended up deciding the U.S. They had about a month boat ride in January in the Northern Atlantic, which was harrowing, a crappy old army boat. My dad got seasick and this and that. They ended up meeting my mom's father, my late grandfather, in New York at Ellis Island, and they go through the paperwork, and it's kind of painless. But her dad was estranged. That she hadn't seen him in 18 years, and he already been remarried, and they had a strange rapport with the second wife. They were in Providence, Rhode Island at the time, and barely spoke English. And finally, my dad escaped through that, and not escaped, but got out of that rut. Learned elementary school English and high school English. Redid his residency while my mom did research, and then finally he became a full-fledged American board certified OBGYN. No jobs in Boston at the time. He trained at the Beth Israel, which is a Harvard affiliate, which is amazing. As alone, another miracle, because I couldn't get into any Harvard program. I don't think if I tried in any specialty. So, but he went through it. But no jobs in Boston at the time. So 1960, they moved to Detroit. 62 actually, and that's the year I was born. And a couple of years later, they moved to suburbia and had a pretty good second half of their life. And again, I'm not into entitlement, but if anybody was entitled to some kind of improvement in their lives, it was my mom and dad because of their, like you said earlier, resilience and their determination and their persistent hope and faith.
We talk a lot about generational trauma on this show. Did your father speak openly about his experiences while you were growing up, or was there a silence in the house regarding the past?
Great question. And a lot of people ask that, and I love it because a little different answer every time. First half of my life, not so much. I mean, I'm a young kid, so I probably don't understand it. They were more interested in me getting to be cultured, learning about theater and the arts and education, travel, my academic work. They wanted me to go to medical school, which my dad was my hero back from 9th grade, even earlier. So that's all I wanted to do since 9th grade, because I love biology and I loved how my dad loved his work. And I would go with him when he went on rounds and wait for him, take me to lunch, that kind of thing. So this is all before I knew everything that he'd been through in the wars and in enslavement. But then later he talked about it. Later, and my mom always did. They were both Holocaust educators. They had a lot of friends that were Holocaust survivors and a lot of friends that weren't. They respected in the medical and Jewish community. Plus, if there was an Eastern European living in Michigan, they found them. So there was that kind of thing. But later on, they talked about it more. Of course, he wrote his stories down in the 70s, and just leaving it for me, apparently. and probably not even thinking that it would get published, but here we are. And so this is my message. I guess I've been called my dad's messenger. This is my bringing forth the messages that he has with the resilience and determination and the fight against anti-Semitism.
Indeed. You're a medical doctor by trade. Did your clinical training help you analyze your father's survival mechanisms, or did you have to take off the doctor hat to write this as a son?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, no doctor hat, because my dad wasn't a doctor yet. Only 5% of forced laborers survived the war too, and not a lot of people. And they were treated like prisoners of war. So, and they were never even armed. But yeah, doctor hat off. Part of it was being his son. Part of it was the family legacy. Part of it was just being fascinated and hard to get my grasp, my hands around what they had to go through and how they get it through, and still have that motivation, still have that incentive, and not be brought down, not be put under the boot, to go get educated and to improve their lives. So that's it's mixed, very emotional. When I read about my dad's parents dying at Auschwitz, and another miracle was he found out exactly what happened by an eyewitness. It was months after the war was over, but a miracle that he ran into her and she told him what exactly happened with my dad's parents. So, but when I read that, I had to walk away from the project for like a week, maybe a little more, just to recollect my thoughts and digest what that was all about, and kind of a turning point moving forward with my book. And then because I really started getting faster and faster because I wanted to get it done, but sometimes the stories were so sad I just had to walk away.
I can only imagine.
Survivors, sorry, there's happy ones too. I mean,
yeah.
Happy stories too. Happy ending, of course, but so you'll smile, you'll laugh, you'll cry. But go ahead. I'm sorry, we're talking at this.
No, you're good. You're good. This is your time. Survivors of such extreme persecution often oscillate between extreme caution and extreme gratitude. How does your parents' past shape the way they parented you?
Well, both. Like I said, what happened to my parents, what happened to my dad could happen to anyone. Gratitude is there. Sit back, drink the coffee, smell the roses, do something good for your neighbor. Realize that what happened to my dad could be from a bad neighbor, a bad local government, bad federal government, bad foreign government, bad business deal, or a natural disaster, for example, where you're on the run or you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and where you're going to sleep or live or work. Being able to work was a privilege. So I got a little bit of that, and I have a lot of caution too. I mean, part of this fight, and I can't fight anti-Semitism alone. This is part of why I'm doing this. Not just telling my dad's story, but having people realize that it's a very, very bad problem, and it was the same way, and it needs to go away. And the 99% of us that I think are on the normal side, that want family, that want to work, that want to take a vacation, that want to enjoy what little time we have on this earth, I'm just trying to embrace them so that we can educate and develop those that do hate, and somehow get them to align with all this unnecessary violence and persecution and this commitment to genocide, and it's unexplained. And it's not this Jewish people. I get mad when I see African Americans with anti-Semitic, and know what I'm talking about, anti-Semitic remarks, and LGBTQ, because and people lauding Hitler, including the Muslims. I mean, you guys were next. I mean, that's not. They may have targeted Jews first, but if you weren't part of the Aryan race, and even now in the United States, skinheads and white supremacists, if you're not one of them, you're not them. So it's not just the Jewish people. And the African Americans, of course, had to suffer it for many years, even after the Civil War. But who supported MLK and Medgar Evers and the civil rights movement in the 60s were Jewish leaders. It's well documented. So I'm not asking for a reciprocation, but at least some kind of support, and don't fuel the fire, like Gaza did.
Right. Writing a memoir about loved ones can be a form of therapy, but it can also be re-traumatizing. What was the emotional toll on you as you dug into the darkest days of your family's history?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think it toughened me up a little bit as far as my mental expectations and what to think and how to feel. yeah, it's and it was therapeutic to it is definitely therapeutic to share a story that means something and that's found to be good quality. I mean, the book's won 4 awards, and I that's a miracle in itself. And it's gratifying. I'm not the type to pat myself in the back, and I owe it to my team. With a great team, it's another lesson. Just be a team player. It doesn't mean anything if it doesn't help in the fight against anti-Semitism. It's another important point. But it does mean that people out there are hearing my dad's story, and I'm grateful for that. It means a lot to me.
You stated what happened to your father could happen to anyone. That's a chilling warning. What are the early red flags of tyranny that you think we are ignoring today?
Well, it's for one thing, I'm reading about these intellectuals that are based out of Qatar that are financing schools, like the top shelf schools like Sorbonne and Oxford, Harvard, and getting somehow convincing professors to teach this hate and to teach this imperialism and teach this destructiveness. So there's that. I mean, it's horrifying. The propaganda back in Hungary in the 30s, it was newspapers calling for the expulsion of the Jews. And a lot of people that were smart enough got out of Europe and came to the United States or Israel or whatever. But that's how do you move, So, and the crowd, the young people that are contributing to this is devastating, because people that go to Harvard and Yale and Columbia, I would give my left, to go to those schools for undergrad. I mean, I eventually ended up at Yale and Brown, but these people are protesting. Get off campus. If you don't like it here, move to whatever country that you're supporting. But you don't get to kill us. You don't get to kill me. You don't get to block me out of going to class, or my professor from going into class to teach us, because that's what we're there for. So, so felt familiar. A lot of lawsuits are going to be flung. I mean, if they aren't already. If I'm a parent, I would sue and I would take my kid out of that school, send them somewhere else. But you got to be vigilant. I mean, it's up and down, and it's all about educating the young ones. And that's what I want to do ultimately: educate in the classroom, online, to the youngsters. Education starts at home, but like I said, I can't fight anti-Semitism myself. So I try to get a lot of people to listen to what we're saying, like yourself, and thank you. Hopefully, some of your audience is interested in the book, and I do book talks and Zooms and podcasts. I do them live in person, and I've done classrooms, museums, the Holocaust Museum in D.C. I'm willing to, and that's I could do that every day. That's when you're really educating kids, their families, and they really grasp onto your stories.
We're seeing, like you said before, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism and polarization globally. What role does your book play in the modern conversation about hate?
Well, like I said, whatever, it's the same thing as 60, 80, 100 years ago. The song remains the same, just the way people torture and maim and kill and persecute is different. And that's sad too. I wish it weren't like that. I wish I knew more about how to change people's thinking. I mean, some Hamas reverted to changing their mind. It's probably a small minority. I mean, and I only get to read what you get to read or what we see on the news. I mean, unless you're there on the ground, you don't exactly know. The polarization, it's so sad to see in Canada, Australia. I've got cousins in Jerusalem. I've got cousins in Toronto, and I fear for them. And they don't seem to be, when the bomb warnings go off, they take their shelters, but they don't seem to be frightened. I mean, I guess Israel is pretty good about protecting its citizens, except obviously, that day, who knows, and the war that ensued afterwards. But yeah, really sad. And then the United States on campuses here in Florida, thank God, the governor has kind of put a squash to it, and I don't hear about a lot of stuff going on here, but they have had protests, and there have been gay protesters talking against the Jews here in Florida. So, and occasional swastikas posted somewhere. And so, God forbid, I guess people would change their mind if they saw Hamas trucks and armored cars and those horrible flags and people marching with the hijab and the masks on, and then everybody would probably think differently. Then, so far we're trying to. Our government still points the guns at our enemies, thank God, instead of at you and me. And as long as that happens, hopefully we're safe. But you still have individual acts of violence. we've got a high enough crime rate here in the United States. We don't need other governments telling us how to live our lives and threatening our lives for sure.
Indeed. In a world that is increasingly divided, how do we teach the concept of not a real enemy to the next generation? How do we stop dehumanizing those we disagree with?
Well, doing this, I mean, exactly what we're doing, and I'm going to keep doing it until the message seems like it's getting through to people. And again, the classroom would be good. Now, I've queried a lot of people. I've queried Steven Spielberg. I've queried Adrian Brody, Bob Kraft, who does those Stand With Us, the Stand Against Jewish Hate commercials. Oh, he owns the Pats. Adrian Brody was in The Pianist. I've queried a lot of Tom Hanks, but that was the first version of the book, so it wasn't really as polished. But and now we've done a few producers, and it's a fickle business. It is a business, and it's hard. But if the book were ever to be a movie, for example, or a screenplay, a documentary, and a lot of people say it should. I mean, because of all the stories in it, and especially the escapes, I would call it Schindler's List on steroids. I think that kind of audience would really help make a difference, and it would also bring people back to the book. So, but it's a pipe dream. It's going to be a rare occurrence that you get something like that. But I'm not giving up yet. And meantime, we'll sell books, and the more people that read the book, the more people send me good notices about it and give me good reviews and say, well, you could want to come and let's do a program. And that's what it's all about.
For someone listening or watching right now who feels like the odds are stacked against them, what is the one piece of advice that your father would give them?
Never give up. Determination. What I say is there's no substitute for experience. So once he's escaped once, he got better at it, I guess. Integrity. Integrity is a theme that comes up in the book and in our book presentations. Hope. It's good. There should always be hope out there. If there's not, then it's harder. And the people that didn't survive those wars and that oppression weren't so lucky. And it doesn't hurt to have a little religion either. I mean, I think my dad was lucky, but he was also smart, and he had a lot of courage. It's more than one thing, but I think the hand of God had something to do with helping my dad. If you don't believe in God or facsimile thereof, no matter what your religion, I can't believe all these miracles that happened to him for his survival. It's amazing. So, yeah, hope and determination.
All right. It's time for the rapid fire round if you're game.
I'll do my best.
All right. In one word, what kept your father alive?
Hope.
What is the most common misconception about the Holocaust today?
Altogether denial.
As a doctor, what's the first physical sign you see in a person losing hope?
Their hair. I'm kidding. Their mood, I guess. Their mood. Their demeanor.
Which is a more dangerous weapon, a gun or a lie?
A lie.
What's one thing every parent should teach their child about history?
Acknowledge it, and don't have selective amnesia about it. Don't accept the New Testament but not the Old Testament but not the New. Not that I'm Christian, but there's something to it. And don't say, well, this part of history was right and this wasn't. It's not. It's there. It's documented. Don't deny 9/11. Don't deny the Holocaust. Don't deny the enslavement back in the early United States for many centuries and before that even.
Indeed.
Old Testament.
If you could say one thing to your father today about his legacy, what would it be?
I'm proud of you, Dad. I sometimes regret that I didn't do it while he was still alive. And I can hear my mom with the Jewish guilt saying, you couldn't do this while you were still alive. But at least I did it. And it's never too late to do the right thing. And if you believe in heavenly beings that actually can feel or see or appreciate what's going on with their loved ones, then it's all they're out for. What else can I do?
What is the antidote to extremism?
Education. Love, peace, education.
Indeed. One book besides your own that everyone should read to understand freedom.
Oh, well, I got quite a few. I've been tabling them. Where is it? Well, the Reflections is a book. A friend of Reflections is a book who's actually, it was written, she's passed away, Agi Rubin. She's a fellow Holocaust survivor and survived Auschwitz. It was, well, you know, it's a memoir, and well done. The Long Walk was a good book. I'm not quite done with it, but it's a harrowing escape. And the guy's not Jewish; he's actually Christian, but he was a prisoner of war, and good stories there too. I mean, there's a bunch of them. If you look at Amsterdam publishers, they're the ones who thankfully took us on. There's a lot of good stories, a lot of interesting stories as well.
All right. In three words.
Sorry, Papillon is a must-see movie, though. The movie Papillon from the 70s. It was it's not, well, it's a book, I assume, too. I don't remember, but about an escape artist, Devil's Island. Not to do with the Holocaust, just because you said books about escape.
In 3 words, what is never again you right now?
Well, it's kind of too late. I mean, I hate to see, never again means we don't want this mass genocide like happened in the 40s, like and afterwards even. So there's one death is enough. One death is too much, and now we're seeing it again. So I hope more people come up with that. I hope more people say enough is enough, and that's what it means. I mean, and it doesn't have to just mean about the Holocaust, Civil War, Vietnam. I mean, whatever the case might be.
What's one thing you want the listeners to do immediately after this episode?
Well, the one nice thing would be they make great gifts, but Christmas is already tomorrow. Get online and look up Not a Real Enemy by Robert J. Wolfe, MD. Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom. And please order it, read it, send me a review, do a review on Amazon, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your friends of your enemies. Get a book program. You know, we'll do a book presentation if you want, a book signing, book talk, anything to help promote the message. That's the one thing that they can do, and then also enjoy your family, because life is short, time is short. Commodity, our best commodity is time. Our only commodity, as far as I'm concerned, it's not money in stocks, bonds, crypto, real estate. It's time. So enjoy what time you have. On the short time we do have on this planet, enjoy your family while you have family too.
All right, a final question that was sent in by my producer. If your book could be sent back in time to your father when he was young, what note would you write on the inside cover?
We're very proud of you for how hard you work in school and how determined you are, even as a well-to-do kid. That would be my young dad. Later on, you know, it'd be if it were the 50s, let's say, into the 50s. It's amazing. It's amazing what you've accomplished in your life, and how you overcame many obstacles.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you for your appearance on the More Than Therapy podcast, Dr. Wolfe. And thank you so much for those listening and watching to this powerful conversation with Dr. Rob Wolfe.
Thank you for having me.
If there's one thing I'm taking away from today, it's the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Rob's father, Irvin, didn't just survive history. He shaped his own future through integrity and determination. If you want to dive deeper into this saga, I highly recommend picking up Rob's award-winning book, 4-time award-winning book at that, Not a Real Enemy. You can find the book on Amazon and connect with Rob at robertjwolfemd.com. And of course, all this information will be in the show notes. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, you are more than your struggles.
Hey, boss. Okay?
I said I'm fine.
with the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it, and we lost it.
You can talk to me. It's been really, really hard for me.